Hey, movie fans, I'm here to talk about four topics today. The first one is I watched that movie Cocaine Bear. Let me start with the positives. The ambulance sequence is definitely the most entertaining sequence in this movie. Outside of that, there's really nothing else. I thought the characters were really boring, uninteresting, not compelling. I didn't care about one character, they lived or died. Comedy was just felt completely flat for me. A lot of jokes just didn't land for me. I know the concept's supposed to be goofy, but it just like I wasn't entertained or laughing at any of this in this movie. And when the bear's on screen, it's incredibly boring. And I know this is Elizabeth Banks' like third movie after Pitch Perfect 2 and the Charlie Angels reboot. So far, I'm not impressed by her. Like I wasn't a fan of Pitch Perfect 2. Like it was a very mediocre sequel. Like I love the first Pitch Perfect, but the second one was just kind of like forgettable. Wasn't a fan of Charlie's Angels reboot. I thought it sucked, and I gotta be honest, I thought this movie sucked. So yeah, this movie didn't land for me. Wasn't a fan of it. My next topic is I watched the Shazam movie, Shazam Fury of the Gods. I saw it in theaters recently. Thought it was okay. I mean, I love the first Shazam movie. It's one of my favorite DC movies. The positives with this movie is that it has some good ass and the monsters look cool at the end of the creases. I love how the dragon looks. It has some good ass and sometimes the humor worked for me. There's some nice family moments in the movie with the characters. But that's about it. Negatives with this movie is it's a very generic, predictable, middle of the road superhero movie for me. Like even though the comedy worked for me, sometimes there was times where it was a little too silly for me, and the comedy didn't always land for me. And even though I thought Zach Levi is still great in the role, I did feel like he overdid it in this movie for me. Because I think it's also because like Billy's 14 in the first movie, and he stays about to turn 18 in this movie, and just the way he was playing Shazam, the idea of a teenager in a adult superhero adult body. It just didn't like the way Billy was in this movie. The way he's actually played that version of Sam. This movie just didn't match up for me in this movie like they did in the first movie. And the first movie to me was just more funnier. Like I said, the humor sometimes landed, but there was other times where it just felt completely flat. And the villains in this movie, Hellman does give up a vibe of being like a good threat when it comes to like how much of that she is, but the villains were kind of forgettable. Lucy Liu, I thought was underutilized. The girl who played the younger sister, she was fine. Hellman, like I said, definitely has a presence, but her character just wasn't very interesting. So the villains were kind of like forgettable to me. And this movie does have a big cameo at the end. Don't watch any of the TV spots. In my opinion, it's going blind with this movie. Another positive thing with this movie I've got to mention earlier was that I do like the costume better in this. Another negative with this movie is that I feel like this Shazam family was underutilized in this movie because I was excited when the end of the first movie where you're like, oh, you're going to see them as a family of superheroes in the next movie. You see them work together at the beginning in the opening like action scene, but you don't really, since they have them like losing their powers constantly throughout this movie, I felt like they didn't really know how to like what to do with all of them. So it felt like I said, I just felt like they were underutilized in this movie. It also felt like the family storylines wasn't as like I didn't get as mostly invested in the family storyline like I did in the first movie. Like in the first movie, I just had this great storyline of this foster kid who like had this great narrative throughout the movie of him like constantly trying to find his mom and him finding a new family at the end. I feel like in this movie they try to get an emotional storyline in there, but it just felt like it didn't follow straight all the way throughout the whole movie. Because they set up stuff at the beginning of like the one girl man who's going off to college, but they don't really go into it that much. It's kind of like sprinkled, but they don't really have a narrative in any of the characters. And a lot of the family feel like they kind of get sidelined, the Zam family, like a lot of the kids from the first movie. Even the parents, I felt like they didn't really do much in this movie to foster parents compared to the first movie. Another thing with this movie is that a positive with this movie is that the actor played Freddy. He's definitely a standout, and he's the one that gets, in my opinion, the most like when it comes to consistent storyline throughout the whole movie, he gets the best development out of the foster kids in this movie. But that's also a negative because I felt like Billy was barely in this movie. Like I felt exactly Levi Shazam was more in this movie than the actor who played Billy. So the balance just felt like it wasn't good like it was in the first movie between the adult superhero and the kid. So like they try to come, like I said, they drop storylines like the Mary Collins thing, like the fact that Billy doesn't cause foster mom, he just calls her by her name. They like say at the beginning and then it brings up at the end, but I feel like there's not like they don't really go into it. This feels like it's kind of like dropped. It's like in at the beginning and they kind of like tie it up at the end, but it's like it's felt like there wasn't a straight narrative. And like I said, I feel like a lot of family members just kind of like got tossed to the side. Like you don't really get to know them anymore than you did in the first movie. So overall, it's a movie that I thought was fine. It's a very middle of the road, passable superhero movie. Enjoyed it, but it was definitely a step down from the first movie. So yeah, it's an okay sequel. It's worth checking out, but definitely prefer the first movie. Like to me, the first movie is fantastic. This one's just a middle of the road movie. The next thing I want to talk about is just how great this month has been. I just love the fact that this month has had so many movies come out, and this to me is the first month since the pandemic where it just feels like you have a lot of movies to be excited about. You have Dungeons and Dragons, Scream 6, Shazam 2. You had Creed 3, 65, that Comedy Champions I think is coming out too. So I just love the fact that for the first time we've had a month pack of movies. We have something coming out every week you can be excited about. So just as a movie fan, we love seeing movies in theaters. Just love seeing it, and it really does feel like the first month of a movie month since the pandemic started. So I just love seeing that. The next thing I'm talking about is James Gunn, who's directing Superman. I love this news because for me personally, I haven't loved a Superman movie since Superman 2. I like Man of Steel, I like Returns, hated Superman 3 and 4, but one reason why I think he's a great choice is because of his track record. One, he directed the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, which I love. He directed the Guardians Holiday Special, which I love. He directed the Suicide Squad movie, the second one, which I loved. And even though I didn't love Guardians 2, Guardians Galaxy Volume 2 was his weakest comic movie that he directed personally. It still was a decent movie. And just overall, I love the fact that he's a comic fan. He feels like he's passionate about the character of Superman, that he loves comics. Hell, he made me care about it talking Sheena, talking about Keaton. He made you care about characters of Guardians of the Galaxy, which were not popular characters in the comics. They were like kind of D-list characters. So I feel like he can really make you feel invested in Superman. And also, the other thing why I'm excited for him to do Superman is because his movies always have a lot of heart, and one of the things I felt like has been lacking since Superman 2 is just the heart. Like, I understand Zack Snyder trying to go for realistic, grounded. I get it wasn't Superman in that movie, but I didn't like all the decisions he made. And even with Superman Returns, it felt like it was trying to hold on to Pursuit of Air, and at the same time trying to be dark and mopey too. And I think one of the things, I love James Gunn got treated by his father, which was nice. I just love what he said about Superman's greatest weakness is his deal. Like Superman's greatest weakness, he said, is the fact that he has old-fashioned ideas of the world. And I think to me that's what Superman is. To me, he's to be the most joyous character. I used to watch Superman movie like you do, like you watch those first two ones. Like you know what? He makes you feel good about the world. He makes you want to be a better person. He makes you go like, oh, you know what? Tomorrow will be a better day. When I think of DC and what makes Superman stand out among the characters, it's his hope. It's the fact that even in like when you watch Smallville with Superman and Lois show, even in those shows, he'll show sympathy towards some of his villains sometimes. People like constantly believe that people can be better. And I think that's the thing that makes Superman great is that to me he's a joyful character. And I'm not saying I want a Superman movie to be silly, slapstick comedy like Superman 3 and 4. That's where the comedy went overboard. It just didn't work in those two movies. But to me, I never felt like Superman in the DC, what Zack Snyder tried to do with Superman. I never felt like inspired by Zack Snyder's Superman. I felt enjoyed by his character. Even in Superman Returns, Bryan Singer's movie, it felt like they didn't get there either. I feel like that's always been missing. So that's why personally I'm excited for James Gunn because Superman is my favorite of all time, and what makes him great and stand out, and what makes him different in the DC, what makes him different in the DC universe is the fact that he's a joyful character. He believes that people can be better. He believes that despite his ideas being old-fashioned, the world can be better at that. People can be better at that. You can find even his greatest enemies a light side in there. Like they're not all bad. And I think that's just we sometimes need that. We need movies, superhero movie that sometimes it's just about a good guy doing good things, and a character that maybe just looks at the world as a joyful view on the world. So I think sometimes the world can get dark, and I think he's exactly what we need is Superman when it comes to like. I just felt like Zack Snyder and Bison didn't really get that about the character, and we turns and Man of Steel and everything else. So me, I'm excited because it feels like something from a guy who loves a character. So that's my thoughts on James Gunn directing Superman. I'm liking it. Can't wait for the Superman movie. Till next time, movie lovers.